Hi, welcome to this outdoor version of the Castonia Tractor Tech Tip. Today we're going to be looking at two different issues that arise in planting. The first is what you can see right here is when we have ground speed issues with SeedStar, creating skips or gaps in the planter as it's going through its pass. You can see here we've got a 1690 and we've got a gap. We've got two gaps here the whole way across the 40-foot. Some of the issues with the gaps are obviously no crop, so no yield, but as you can see, the weed issue starting to pop up as well. So it creates a harder weed control issue as well. Here we are in a big gap in a cornfield, 24 row wide. And one thing we're also going to show later in here is the actual recording or the map created when this is planted. And what the ground speed messing up was doing was, besides causing these bare gaps like here, which you can see it's a nice highway for the deer to come down in and some feeding along the edges, but you also see that on each side of these gaps we were extremely high population as well as nothing in between. The biggest thing we had going on here, and the way to fix it, is we come in here to our planter setup, we go to our sensor tab, and if it's not on tractor speed, select tractor speed. Most likely your current setting might be on auto. So by default, auto is going to use the radar source from your tractor, but when it fails, then it can skip or be confused, and we get a lot of variable rates as we're going through the field. So like here in the cornfield, we saw gaps. And then if you look in here, we're seeing extremely heavy population. So it was confused. It thought it was stopped, then it thought it was going in faster, and it was overpopulating because it was confused. And again, to fix that, we remove the check mark from the auto, and we go down here, and we have three choices. So the first choice is radar. The second choice is wheel speed. We need to disconnect or not try and utilize the radar because that's what is confusing the system. And if we go to wheel speed, that will be a constant and more even flow of speed. Now you might also ask, what is the wheel speed indicator with an M? This is a manual. Let's say the wheel speed does not work as well. With the manual, and we select that, we can put a speed in there and maybe finish the field or get to the end, something like that, to do a fix on either the radar and or the wheel speed. So that's what the manual option would be. Another fix here with the radar gun, depending on the generation of tractor or model you have, there are various ways we can feed from the John Deere GPS receivers a radar emulation based on the GPS. This is also a very effective fix, and more we're getting guys, when the radar gun fails on the tractor, we configure it and run it off of the GPS, and that's a very efficient fix as well. This field that we're seeing here is evidence of what we talked about, issues with the quick start. As you look down in here, it's not the easiest to see, but from here we can see the planter was actually in the ground right here, but we really didn't get started planting and dropping seed in the soil until up in here. And the first thing we're going to talk about is these gaps up here in the corner where we started. We're using the map to identify issues in the field before the corn emerges, and by zooming in here, we can amplify what we're seeing actually in the field. So the first thing we would say here, and as the farmer started and went across the end row this way, if we come in, again, you might have a different view depending on the generation of SeedStar you have, but the SeedStar 2 and XP look similar to this here. But this button right here, if you can see where my mouse is pointing, will rotate the meters. Each time you click that, I believe it goes a half around, but you use this anytime you have turned the vacuum off and no seed is on the meters. So you can load the disc so that it starts dropping seed as soon as you start. This is possibly part of what we saw here, but then the next thing is up this button right here, the quick start. And every time you would stop, so if you're out in the field and moving and stop and do some adjustments or check stuff, even if you back up, you have to hit the quick start reset every time you want to use it. So you just hit it and start moving. So that's how the two ways that I would suggest to reduce these types of errors here. So in summary, we've shown you evidence in the field. We've shown you the evidence here on the recorded or printed out maps of how we can identify issues going on in the field, whether we've seen them and then go back to find out what might be happening, what's recorded, or before the crop gets up and we scout the field physically, we can look at the maps and identify some of the issues that we've pointed out here today. So hopefully with this, you'll find this useful in ways to identify problems, both with the documentation as well as visually, and some potential fixes and what to look at and how to correct it from the driver's seat. Thanks for your time.